Hey everyone, this is Ben Brettingen here for the onX Hunt Masterclass. Today we're going to be talking about how to hunt and scout for ruffed grouse and woodcock, and we're super happy to have everyone here tonight. The season, it's either kicked off or it's kicking off, so depending on where you live. Um, I'm really looking forward to the season. I know our guest tonight, co-host on this, Mr. Jerry Havel. He's getting fired up. He's getting ready for the season. Jerry, it's good to have you on.
Thank you, Ben. And we're about 2-3 days away from Minnesota ruffed grouse and a week from woodcock. So Michigan, I know, is open and some other places around the country. So we're a little behind here, but it's going to be a good year.
Yeah, well, we are going to we're going to give it a few minutes here, let some people roll in. Just remember that your cameras are off, you're muted. We can't hear you, so don't worry about it. Also, if you have any questions for Jerry or myself, use the Q&A function down at the bottom of the screen. If you want to ask questions, that's a place to ask questions. If you want to chat, there's also the chat button. You can type in where you're from, what you're looking forward to hunting. A lot of people have honestly used the chat to say, hey, I'm in North Dakota or I'm in Minnesota and want to get together with some people and hunt. So feel free to go to town there. So, Jerry, you got a busy year coming up. What are you most looking forward to?
Well, I will be very honest with you. If you're from Minnesota, Wisconsin, I think even in the UP, the last 2 winters have been extraordinarily perfect for grouse and woodcock survival, or grouse survival, excuse me. And the springs have been really great for the woodcock and the grouse. So we're seeing some good numbers in Minnesota. I know, talking to my buddies out in Dakota or out in UP and Wisconsin, lower Michigan, they're seeing some good numbers. Seeing a few smaller birds typically, and I think part of that is because we had such a late spring that the nesting was kind of a little bit later. But I think we're going to have another. I think the survey or the cycle in Minnesota says it's down, but the last 2 years have been awesome, and our drumming counts were up, and I know we're getting ready because I did hear a couple sexually confused male drummers starting a couple nights ago. So, like I said, it should be a good season for us and everybody, I think.
Yeah, it's no matter if the birds are good or bad, like I am just chomping at the bit, ready to go. So, it looks like
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, if you're a grouse and woodcock hunter, we literally wait 10 months for these 2 months. And the ferns are starting to turn, and this is the best time of year if you're a bird hunter, especially if you're a grouse and woodcock hunter.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it looks like we're getting a ton of people in here. I'm really happy that everyone is here tonight, and we'll do some introductions here in a second. But I know you guys are going to learn some stuff from Jerry. He's a wealth of knowledge. So be sure to stick around. We've got a few housekeeping items here to go through. Um, Remember, your videos are turned off. You're muted. Don't worry about that. Please keep it civil in the chat. We're all here to have fun. We're bird hunters, so just keep her between the lines for us. At the end of the webinar, or actually, Jack, our webinar guy, he is going to be posting a link for giveaways. So be sure to sign up for that. Click on that link. Try to win some onX swag. Yeah, it should be a fun night. I know I'm excited to learn a lot. So without further ado, we're going to kick things off here. So with us tonight is a Mr. Jerry Havel, who is the owner of Pineridge Grouse Camp and also Upland Gun Company. And Jerry is an awesome guy. I've had the pleasure of being friends with him, and absolute wealth of knowledge. So, Jerry, I'd love for you to take a second and introduce yourself.
That was pretty good. I'm literally like everybody else. I just love to get in the woods and chase dogs and point a few birds and hopefully harvest a couple. I'm one of the few people lucky that do this for a living. And that's not lost on me. So I'm very thankful and appreciative of that. Also, you mentioned we do, my partner and I founded Upland Gun Company, and we're happy to be associated with onX and their elite program, which has really been a fun program for us, and I hope for you guys. But like I said, there's no, the only dumb question is what kind of boots to buy and who makes the best hunting chaps. But we all see those on social media. But anyway, like I said, yeah, we'll help them where we can. And if people want to follow up personally, just shoot me an email at Pineridge Grouse Camp and we'll help them that way too. Not a problem.
Yeah. So also, if you want to follow along on Jerry's fall, um, at Grouse Camp on Instagram. Otherwise, if you want to see some of the guns, like he mentioned, as an elite member, you get access to free upgrades on Upland Gun Company guns. They're absolutely beautiful. I've got one here with me and I love it. So be sure to check that out if you're an elite member. I'm Ben Brettingen. I work for onX Hunt and I'm a bird hunting nut. So we should have a fun evening in store. So without kind of where I want to start things off here is I want to talk about, we're going to kind of start at the very beginning of I am going to a new state or I am going, even if I want to go hunt around me, how do I go out and find new spots? Like I said, whether they're close to home or multiple states away, how do I hone in on an area that's got birds? And then from there, how do I pick apart each property so I can be the most efficient in the woods? Because that's, I guess, for me, that's the goal. Is I have a limited amount of time to spend in the field. So when I'm out there, we want to be maximizing the time and finding birds. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the web map here. So if you guys don't know, a lot of folks know that we have the app on your phone, but also we have the web map here, which can be used on a desktop. This is personally where I do most of my scouting, just because it's larger. I find it a little bit easier to navigate with the big screen. So I highly suggest people use this.
I'm going to add one thing too. I mean, I know our season's starting next week, but really, if you want to be a very proficient grouse hunter, use the desktop, use it in December, January on those cold nights and just start playing around. With myself and my guides, that's when we do a lot of our scouting and getting ready for the upcoming season really is off our desktop or laptop in January, February. There's nothing we can do or we can't run dogs, but Ben's right. The desktop is a lot more features and some really cool, some very new additions you guys have added too that are going to be very helpful.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So, I guess a lot of my experience personally is kind of in the Great Lakes region. It looks like we do have a lot of folks in here from the Great Lakes. I know there were a number of questions on hunting grouse out in the mountains, and we'll kind of touch on that in the end. But a lot of these same principles can be used no matter, actually, to be honest, no matter if you're hunting pheasants, if you're hunting quail, grouse, the same kind of approach can be used to tackle different species, obviously different habitats and whatnot, but this approach can be used the same. So I'm just going to go over a quick little once over kind of onX, what I have turned on, how to get my map looking the way I want it to when I start scouting. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at my layers. So we're going to just talk about Minnesota, but very similar across other states. So the layers that I'm going to have on in Minnesota is I'm going to have my private lands layers on, government, possible access, which is a really interesting one. So for example, here in Minnesota, there's a number of properties that are privately owned where you can publicly access them to hunt. One example would be Blandon Paper Company land. The one caveat to using this layer is that you'll definitely want to make sure to confirm permission before you go out there. That's why it's possible access. So like, for example, with Blandon, go ahead, Google Blandon Paper Company hunting. It'll pop up, it'll say, yep, you can hunt these properties, and those properties will show up kind of as this green polka dotted here. If you click on it, it will say Blandon Paper Company. So that possible access layer I'll have that turned on a lot of the times for grouse in kind of the Northwoods area. Another one is this forest disturbance layer, which was recently added for Minnesota. and it brings out a ton of new timber cuts. And we'll get into timber cuts later, but it essentially, I don't know, 10x the amount we have in the app. So really exciting. Actually, Jerry, it's one of Jerry's guides that kind of brought me onto this, and super thankful for her bringing it to us, because now all of you have this great resource in front of you. So those are kind of the layers that I'm going to use. Kind of last thing before we get into it is the base map. So, whether you're out west, a lot of guys will use this topo map. I'll use it for finding like swamps, for bodies of waters, creeks, that kind of thing. But pretty much where I live and die is using the hybrid map, because you're going to be able to see like the different types of cover. You're going to be able to see swamps. It's going to be a lot more telling, and we are going to dive into that here for this webinar. So, Jerry, let's pose a question to you.
Yep.
So we're going hunting. We are going to Minnesota for the first time. Never hunted here before. Where does a guy even start?
Great question, and I do get that a lot. I had the question, actually, a guy from, I think, Virginia called me up, and he's gonna do it himself, which is awesome. You obviously, if you pick an area that you're looking at, and I know, look at like Minnesota, for example. And again, to be successful at anything, you have to have preparation. Proper preparation prevents poor performance, and it really, we use onX for that. So I would pick an area, and you got this area up right now. I would right now start looking at, I would be looking for edges. I would be looking at some of the swamp edges, some of the water that you see there, not necessarily lakes, but some of the swamps, especially on that hybrid. And yep. I would then zoom in, just grab one, Ben, but zoom in and just look at some of those swamp edges. And from there, you kind of work your way out. For example, Go ahead.
So one thing is like, first off, like taking a step back here, first off, you have to be going in an area that has grouse present, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So
and that's pretty much, I mean, the neat thing about Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, the UP, northern lower, I mean, you can throw a dart and get into pretty good grouse cover. And that's pretty, and I've hunted the UP, I've hunted Michigan, lower Michigan, and you can really find it. So once you kind of pick on an area, let's just say an hour square mile from Crystal Falls, or a town that you're going to be camping in or sleeping in, really zoom in there and look for some of the swamp, some of that gray area. Swamp land is a good way where I start, because I know there's usually going to be some good edges, and then you can kind of zoom in and really get pinpointy, like right there's a beautiful, look right there. Yeah. So like right there, that Cabotogama State Forest. I see this little area, you see the forest disturbance there, but you see all these edges. You see all these edges around that on the right side there. And that usually is a good indication. I'm a real believer if it's a swamp edge, an 8-year-old cut to a 20-year-old cut edge, or an oak cut, edges are great. So if you look at this area right here, and you've got your layers on, I believe, that would be you can see on the north up here, Ben, kind of, I don't have access to the thing, but it looks like there's a pretty good cut right up in there.
Yep.
You know what I'm looking at?
Here's a 2012, 18, 2012. So it's like a mosaic of different cuts.
Exactly. You're looking at that cookie cutter. Correct.
Yep.
Looking at that cookie cutter.
Yeah, for sure. And, let's take another step back here, Jerry. And like, I saw there was a number of new people on here that have maybe grouse hunted very little, or are looking forward to grouse hunting for the first time this year. Will you just give like a 30,000 foot overview on kind of what good grouse habitat is, what it looks like, I guess, without.
Yeah. It's thick, it's dirty, it's nasty, it's dark, it's awesome. And so what I tell people, there's, you look at anywhere from an 8 to 15-year-old aspen cut. And that's usually a good indicator. So when you're looking at your onX, look for those type of big cuts. Again, looking for the edges. I don't walk a lot of trails. We'll use trails to get into some deep cover, but you really want some, a good young whip. What do they say? What's the size? Like a size of your hand or smaller is good.
Yeah, like your wrist size. After that, they
size.
start to get a little bit bigger.
You know, I tend to stay away from the pines a little bit because there might hold birds there, but it's tough to get a shot at. But you know, edges and aspen, if you do have some pines in there, that's good because that gives some roosting cover a little bit for them. But the biggest thing I think for grouse hunters is just don't be afraid to get off the trail. You know, these birds are they're gonna be all over. You just got to try to find them and find a pattern that you like. And if you stick with some of these aspen cuts, again, like you guys have, and the best thing to do is just drive around and look with your onX on in your truck. But look at these aspen cuts. You might find the pattern in some areas that it might be a little older, 25, 30-year-old aspen cuts that's got some good underbrush and good hazel underneath it or something. So if it's dirty, nasty, and you can't walk in it, there's probably a grouse in it.
Yeah, and that's you brought up a really good point there, Jerry. Earlier, where we were talking about different pieces of cover coming together. We'll show you some tools on kind of like how to pinpoint that. Another thing that I like to looking at the landscape on a larger scale. You know, thankfully in whether it's Maine, the UP, even Lower Peninsula, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, we're blessed by an absolute plethora of public land. So it's not as difficult, like it's almost more daunting, right? To figure out, I'm looking at here and literally there are grouse everywhere here. So, you know, we talked about, like, I honestly, like some of this, I just throw a pin on a map and just start looking for areas, right? And
you know, one thing too, I just saw a buddy of mine who was very nice, and he said he was going to send nasty notes, but a lot of these edges are going to hold food too, because they're getting access to sunlight. And so, like I said, you get some good food there, especially later in the year. You know, let's say the leaves are down and it gets a little cold, they'll hold better food sources. So, but you know, but Ben's right. You look at northern Minnesota, you just got to get the boots down and the dog, and just crush it. And you know, keep in mind, a grouse is going to live in a 40 acre the whole life really within 40 acres. So you really have to look at that 40 acres as a separate entity where it's going to hold a couple birds, and kind of work it and handle that cover. You know, where the best edges are, where they're going to flush to, you know, and you can kind of pinpoint and zero them in that way.
Yep, exactly. One tip that I use when I'm going to a new area is I will essentially find big cities. Like, for example, Minnesota, bigger ones are Duluth, Grand Rapids, Bemidji, even the Twin Cities, Brainerd area. And what I will do is essentially draw a 50-mile or 30-mile radius, 50-mile radius around each one of those cities and say, I am not going there, because that is obviously a population center of people. So there's going to be, odds are there's going to be a lot more pressure in those areas. So I take these big cities and say, I am not going anywhere around there. And I'm going to turn on my cursor here so everyone can see where I'm playing around here. It's going to reload, but because, you know, while there is a ton of public land, like these birds, Jerry can attest to it, after getting harassed for a while, they can get skittish. They can get more difficult to hunt. So that's one tip I do. But, you know, for the sake of this, Jerry, let's just get into it. Let's just say we kept picking on ore, but let's just go. It doesn't matter where you are. Never hunted up there. I don't know if there's any birds. Probably are. But we're going to go say, I know. So we're going to say, all right, we're camping around here. Let's go find some birds. Like, let's go start e-scouting and trying to find these different areas. So, Jerry, let's just walk me through.
So one of the nice things about Minnesota, Wisconsin, the UP of Michigan, these Great Lakes states a lot of people are here from, we have an abundance of public land. We have a lot of state land and county land. And notice I said state and county. I didn't say federal. We all have a lot of federal land. And what's nice about the feds haven't been cutting a lot, but they're starting to. So we're going to start adding more federal land in our scouting and our hunt trips. But really, that county and state land, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan are really doing a lot of cutting. So when I look at a map like this, I really look at the county lands and the state lands before I look at anything else. And as you're zeroing in there, Ben,
Yeah. So if you click on the different types of lands, you can see who owns it. Like, for example, this is St. Louis County. They're also labeled. So you have Cabotogama State Forest, Superior, like little blocks of Superior National Forest in there. So they're different color coordinated. Like this tan color is generally going to be your county lands. And then your darker greens are going to be state forest, and lighter going to be national forest. So
I would really focus on county lands first and then look at your state lands.
Yep.
And right there, I think we got some county right there.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, zoom in on that, Ben. And really just start looking, like I said, looking for edges, looking for real distinct markings, and you can kind of pick up some of the clear cuts, some of the swamp edges, and really kind of, and try it. You know, we can do all this, but we still have to get in there and try it. And yeah, like right there, that would hold it right there, Ben, where you got the blue dot. Yep. That, to me, if I'm coming around there, you look at you got a 2013 disturbance, a 2010, a 2020 on county land. I would mark that as a place I'm going to go check out in the spring, or if I'm going to be hunting, I'm going to check out in the fall. It's got kind of everything we really need right there. You've got a couple different age classes of cut, so to speak. And like I said, you've got some good swamp edges, some good river look like in there. Hopefully that would be an A cover once I got in there with my dogs and started running around.
One thing, so like this is a good spot. It looks like a good spot. I'm sure this holds birds. The one thing is when you're like what we do is we just essentially are just scrolling around on the map all day, trying to find these different spots and marking them. The one thing I want to point out is when you're looking around for these spots, is access is a big deal, because if you've read our landlocked reports for the Midwest, like there is still a significant amount of landlocked public land in Minnesota, as well as land that's just really difficult to access. So like, for example, this spot here, what I would do is like, okay, this looks good. Now I'm going to try to find how I could get into this area even. I'm just looking for roads that might touch it. There's a trail. There's a trail here, but like, for example, I don't know anything about this Voyager Trail, Rainy Lake. Like, I don't know if you could access it from there. So I probably would get on Google. It looks like this area right here. You could get in there through Cabotogama State Forest land and work your way up to that trail and connect. But actually, I don't even know if you could get across this swamp here to get over there. So like that, this is a good instance of an area that I might say, dang, this is really good, but like there's just not a great way to access it, because I don't want to be burning 2 hours walking through unproductive cover to get to the spot when I could be parking, getting out, and boom, being right into cover, or at least hunting my way through some marginal cover to get there. Would you agree with that, Jerry?
Yeah, but the neat thing, if you're looking on here, there's a lot of snowmobile trails, it looks like, on here. And that's another toolkit. I think I keep in my truck a list of the area snowmobile trails that the snowmobile clubs put out. Really can't drive them, but they're really good access points and to get into some really good cover. I know you'll talk about it too, Ben, where how you can really map before you get in the woods how far a walk that would be with your little.
Yeah. And another thing that I turn on is the motorized roads and trails, which is under roads, trails, and rec folder. This is going to give you a for sure, like you'll see these things, these roads highlighted in purple, and those are going to be roads that you can for sure drive on. Trails are going to give you obviously just areas that you can get in through. Some of them you can drive on, some of them you can't. So just got to take that with a grain of salt. So Jared, we'll just keep perusing like that. Yeah, that's a good spot, but that might be a good sleeper, like later
Yeah.
season spot where, there's a lot of pressure. Like the odds are that there's probably not very many people going back into this area because it looks like it's pretty difficult to access.
Yeah. One
Um,
thing too, I like to talk about when, as you're looking for another place, but we do the research in the winter, we check it out when we're woodcock banding, but really when we're guiding, and even if you're hunting by yourself or some buddies, it's really, really nice to have a plan when you get out of the truck. You've seen it on your map. Um, Pick out your iPad, pick out your phone, and really, you and your buddy, or if you're guiding somebody, whatever, I show my guides to my customers, but really have a plan on, hey, this is what the lay of the land is going to look at. And, here's how we're going to work this cover. We're going to work up this side and kind of make a loop in. All that goes for naught when your dog's on point somewhere and you have to run, get to it. But it is nice to use and have a plan, a visual plan when you're going in the wood, because again, grouse and woodcock hunting's tough. You can't see a lot of times you can't see your buddy even 30 yards away early season. So, you've done the work and you kind of visualize it, but just having it in your back pocket when you get out of the truck. And again, we all forget to do it, but it is nice to mark the truck at times as well. It's very easy
yeah,
to get lost and mixed up a little bit. So
yeah. So here's a spot that I found that
I have a better
I
one.
we found right here. We have access. We've got a road that we can drive on. What I'll do, like if I'm going out to scout or like I am just e-scouting here, what I'll do is I'll pretty much add a spot on the map here. I'm going to label it yellow, like this is my access area. You can also use whatever you want. For example, parking. The one thing I will tell you is with the icons is be sure to use icons because otherwise your map can just look absolutely crazy with red X's, and then eventually you're going to have no idea what all those X's mean. Whether if I hunted there, did I e-scout there, did I not find birds there? So each person kind of has their own way of color coding. Like for example, what I do is I use yellow is I've e-scouted it, never been there. Blue is an area I've been to, found birds. Uh, Pink is an area um, that I have been to, maybe drove by, confirmed it looked good, and then finally I also use black for areas I've been to that didn't turn out very good. So it's just as important to remember areas that, okay, IDD, that wasn't the right habitat, because a lot of the times I can get suckered back into saying, oh, I should go there. That looks like a really good spot. And then get there and it's like, oh yeah, I've been here before. So that's kind of my system. Some people do it by years as well. So that's another way to do it. Um, but yeah, like Jerry, what stands out to you? Why does this look good again?
Well, right. You look at that forest disturbance, you've got a couple different age classes, it looks like in there where you got your little blue thing.
Yep.
It's cut in 2005. So you're looking at, what, about 18, 20 years old. You've got some good water. You've got some good edges. If you look a little bit north there, you've got some real new disturbance. 2020, 20, so you've got different age classes within there, and you really, it's hard to see here a little bit. But I had a talk about it with the other day. There's, that's a big, big piece of property. And believe it or not, you're going to have, I like to say, micro covers within that big cover where you might have a 20 or 30 yard alder run within that on one of those edges, or you see that little legacy patch right there where your blue circle is. That's a
Yep.
great little edge to come around there. So you've got micro covers, within these big covers that are going to probably hold some birds. And, that's where having a good dog that you can direct over that way where you don't have to run it. A lot of those edges right there, like you're marking there, are going to have, going to have some good food sources. You see some lowlands in there. You see a really distinct logging trail right there, transition. So, there's covers within covers, and that's really important when you're working these birds, because these birds, believe it or not, they're a lot smarter than us sometimes, and they're going to be where they're going to be. But you really gotta, you don't want to leave a little micro cover, like you said, that one not that big, but send the dog in there, or you just wait and walk the edge of it or whatever. And we're out here to try to be successful, and you can't let those little spots go. We've all got stories, and I told myself we're not going to get in the story business tonight, but we've all had places where, God, there shouldn't be a bird there, but somehow the dog goes there, or you accidentally walk to it, and you know what, it's a young aspen cut or whatever, and all of a sudden there's 4 or 5 birds there. So this is really good looking grouse stuff. Woodcock are going to be in there. And I haven't seen many woodcock questions, but woodcock, like the last 2 years, are a little different for us because it was so dry, and our typical woodcock spots had a real thick grass growing in it because it was so dry. There was no water. So your forest disturbance map layer is actually a big deal for us, because we found a pattern last year where it was so dry, and we were hitting 1 to 3 to 4 year old aspen whips, literally really young cuts that held a lot of woodcock in it, because that ground was still turned up. It was still kind of loose, held moisture, held dew, and we found that's kind of was our pattern to move a lot of woodcock last year versus our typical spots before the flight birds came down. So
yeah,
that's why these spending a little bit extra time and finding these covers like that, and that young aspen's a big deal.
yeah. And Jerry, like for example, like grouse prefer a little bit. I mean, they use a lot of different habitats, but generally prefer a little bit older cuts than a woodcock. Generally, you're looking for a little bit thicker, probably younger cut for woodcock.
Yeah, the grouse are going to be a little bit more diverse. You're going to have some hazel. You're going to have some high bush, you're going to have, oaks and little pine, but you're going to have primarily aspen's going to be really, really close there. Later season, birch catkins are their number one food source late season in December, and we've touched on a little bit, but food really, go where the food's at for grouse. And then, keep in mind early season, they're still in there brooded up a little bit. So they're going to be a little easier to find. But once that cold weather hits and the first frost, it's kind of like fishing. They start getting panicky and they start moving and looking for food. So you can really, like I said, find a little bit diverse stuff with some aspen near it or in it. Woodcock, this year, if we got water, which it looks like we do, a real young aspen cuts on that. Like I said, your typical woodcock cover that we've all seen about. You're going to find birds. So it's kind of like fly fishing, but one of the cool things about grouse and woodcock hunting is finding your own covers. And I'm not going to go into the unwritten rules where you take a buddy and he doesn't show up there, or, there's all that. There's the unwritten rules, but there is some pride in finding your own grouse cover, taking your dog in there and killing a bird or two. And it's yours, And I want to also say too, I could talk for days on this because you know me, Ben, but if you find your own grouse cover, you have to assume somebody else is going to be in there. All right. And so what you don't want to do is go in there and just shoot everything. I kind of have an unwritten rule on my covers that, Utopian, we have a brood of 12 grouse. If I go in there, I'm going to take 2. I assume Ben's going to go in there and take 2. You don't want to go in there and shoot 5, 6 birds, because you know what? That tends to shoot a cover out, and it takes a while for grouse to come back in there. So there is some conservation or some ethics. Again, I think is important for a grouse and woodcock hunter. And like I said, find your own covers, take a couple birds out there, have a good time, and do it the right way. Is pretty rewarding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's important, just to help conserve that resource. Somebody had a great question in the Q&A here, and I just want to address it. So like with Minnesota, with Wisconsin, if you're from Wisconsin, they've got this great thing called the Wisconsin game bird layer, which essentially just highlights the good grouse areas, good woodcock areas. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. but there's a lot of states as well that don't have as robust timber cut data as say Minnesota or Wisconsin does. So somebody asked like, how do you identify? I think it was coming from Maine. How do you tell what good cover looks like without that? So a couple ways to do it. The first way is just looking at aerial imagery. This, for example, here is a timber cut. What we'll look at, so we're looking at here, if you look at these trees over here, like this is an older growth area. And the reason that we know that is because if I bring up my handy dandy line distance tool right here, I'm going to click on a canopy of one tree. You can see that's one tree and that's 10 yards. So that's 30 feet across. That's a pretty big canopy. That's not what we're looking for. Where you come down here and you look at this area and you can tell this area is a lot more smooth, is kind of what actually the way Nick Larson described it, which is I love to use it. So this is very smooth. It's much more uniform than say this. And another way you can tell a timber cut is rarely there are straight edges in nature. So you look at here, there's a corner here. There's a corner in here. This is a straight line here. So that's a good indication that there's some sort of disturbance at play. So if you don't have these, what I would just be doing is cruising around like this. Again, you can tell this is a cut here.
Yep, that's good.
You can really see that delineation between one to the other. But another cool tool we have as well, if you go down to trees, crops, and cover in your map layers, scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see this layer called young aspen forest. And what that is going to do is it's going to identify the patches of young aspen in your area. And like, obviously we're in Wisconsin right here and they've got a ton of young aspen. But this will at least help you cut down that learning curve, figuring out, where even in the ballpark is some good cover. So this is identifying aspen anywhere from like 5 to 15 years, and there's some error on either side of it, but this is at least going to get you in the ballpark here. So
hey Ben, why don't you throw on your oak layer too at the same time? We got a lot of acorns dropping right now, and believe it or not, acorns are a good food source. So if you can find some, not a lot, you're not going to hunt oak woods, but if you've got some oak around some of your aspen cuts that like on these map layers, that might be a nice place to check out as well.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see here, all the young aspen is in that purple, and the oak is in red. So to Jerry's point, tool around here and try to find, again, edges. So like here is an instance, right? We've got an young aspen cut right here. You've got some oak hickory forests, and then you also have, these different kind of mosaic of swamp edges. So, that might be a spot where I'm going to say, all right, I'm going to put a waypoint on this spot because, that looks pretty promising. And then what I'll do from there is, I should change this. I'm breaking my rule here. I got to change that back to yellow. What I would do is just go around and mark. Just depends how much time you have, but if you're going to a new area for the first time, I'd say go mark 50 different spots or 25 different spots, because you never know when you get there, if there's somebody in that spot, if all of a sudden that area is not good and you have to transition somewhere else. To Jerry's earlier point, the last thing you want is to get to a spot or get to an area, and then all of a sudden you burn through your one great spot and there were no birds there. And then you start scrambling and making bad decisions and just saying, oh, I'm going to go walk this, I'm going to go walk that, right? So having a plan is pretty important. Another tip I'll say is when you're driving around up in good grouse cover, have your onX up on your phone in your truck. Obviously be safe, but be looking around and say, okay, that looks like good grouse cover. We've got those young aspens, that are anywhere from broom handle to wrist thick. That looks like good grouse habitat. Then what I do is I just throw a waypoint on it quick. And what then I go back and look at the aerial imagery and say, okay, on the map, this is what it looks like. And in person, this is what it looks like. So a lot of the people that are really good at e-scouting can instantly look at a map from, you know, aerial to aerial view of a map, and then know in their head and translate it what that cover looks like on the ground. And that's a big deal. If you can do that really fast, you'll be good at e-scouting. And the one way to do it is driving around and making that mental connection for yourself. So I was telling you guys about this Wisconsin game bird. If you're a Wisconsin guy, you're really lucky. You can see all these areas that pop up. Like, sure enough, that area I marked as this is potentially good, they give you a nice little grouse cover where at one point was a cut. So that's super handy. Jerry talked about earlier a little bit about planning your hunt as well, and then the line distance tool. So I like to do this just to kind of give a perspective of what, like, how far I'm going to walk, what areas I want to key in on, because it's hard sometimes on a map. You're looking at here. I mean, there is a little legend in the corner, but it's a hard time. Like, you know, you have a hard time a lot of times with scale. So like, how far is it from this road back to this icon? Is that 5 miles? Is that a mile? Is that 600 yards? So what I'll do is, just to get a good feel, is I'll just kind of mark up the areas I want to hunt. So again, I'm going to go here. Looks like there's a little offshoot, little logging road, right, that we could park right here. I'm going to go label that as access. And then I'll go through and highlight different areas I want to hit. So to Jerry's point, like, Jerry, you tell me, would you take this, if you're walking in here, would you walk in on this trail and then take this edge down, or what would be your approach?
I would probably go on that south edge here.
Yep.
And come around, and then like I said, because you're going to kind of funnel, if you do wild flush or moose and stuff, you're going to funnel them into that still good cover versus that big mature cover, and then kind of come around to the swamp, hit that edge. And like I said, if you bump some birds to the north, you're going to keep them in that cover, so to speak. Is how I would run that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great point about, you know, knowing what pressure does to birds, where they're going to want to move.
Yeah, if you're going to walk, you know, you can't control the situation. If you're going to walk right down the center, you could have birds going to the right or the left, and you might miss, like I said, you might miss an opportunity, you know, for a reflush 20 minutes from now or an hour from now. You know, let them sit for a little bit.
Yeah. Actually, you know, upon looking at this, what I would do, it looks like there's a little bit more established road up here, because it looks like this is a big highway, so I might not want to park right on the highway. So I might say I'm going to access it here, and then we're going to bust out our line distance tool and just kind of mark up different areas, like key areas that you want to hit. And then what I'll do is I'll go to my line distance tool and just get a feel for how long of a walk that would be. So like Jerry was saying, maybe take this edge. Edges are huge, right?
Yep.
Take this edge. There's a little creek here. You know, maybe work it along this swamp. Go back here. So, and then it just depends how long you want to walk, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I don't want to walk that long, so I'm just going to cut through here, hunt this edge of the swamp, maybe do a little loop around here, and then take this edge all the way back up here.
Yep.
Get back to the truck. So, and then that's going to give, so that's a 2.5 mile walk, right? So if you want more, then hey, let's go and hunt around this cover. Or if you want less, then you can do so, right? So, but this just gives you an idea. So I like to do this when I'm going to a new area on, you know, 5 or 6 different spots, go into this much detail. But I always mark these key areas I want to hit, because then when I'm in the heat of the moment, I've got it like top of mind. Yep, I'm gonna go hit this spot, this one. And then also, the last thing you want to do is like, well, okay, there's 2 things. So I like to mark up like at least a day's worth of walks in one area. And Jerry, you can touch on this probably.
Yep.
You got a comment?
Yeah, I would just say if you look at this, and you know what, that's a good 2 hour, 2.5 hour maybe walk in the morning. You got this place just right where you're at there. That looks like a good hour and a half. You know, the last thing you want to do is spend 2 hours driving to a cover, 2 hours driving to a cover, 2 hours driving to a cover. So really, myself and my guides really use onX to map out our day. I've got a set group of covers that I go to on Tuesday, and I don't go back there for another 7 to 10 days. So I've got to, you know, and you want to have, you know, you're just like me, time is valuable. So the less amount of time in the car, more time on the woods, the more successful, the better your dog's going to be, the whole 9 yards. So, you know, you just kind of zoom out a little bit and you look at this area, you literally could spend one full day bouncing around here and picking up birds here and there, and have a pretty successful hunt looking at the covers. You know, you're not that far away. You might have to drive a little bit to come up to where that blue dot is, but that's not a long drive. So really plan your days out. The last thing you want to do is spend 4 hours in the car looking for something that looks like good habitat, and only to come out that it's only about 50 yards deep and then it's a swamp because you haven't done your preparation for it.
Yeah, exactly. So, um, let's just say like, all right, I'm staying here in this Stanberry or something like that. The other thing I'll do is I'll mark up areas, or like I won't have every single one of my waypoints in this area, for example, because what if they're at the exactly the wrong time of the year when those chicks are little, there was a big deluge, big downpour, and the bird numbers aren't as good there. So what I'll do is I'll find, maybe go north and find some spots up here. Maybe I'll go, down here and mark up some spots as well, because then it just gives you more opportunity to get into different areas. And it gives you options in case your plan A, plan B doesn't go exactly right. Um, and then Jerry, we talked about some grouse areas. Like for example, this is Wisconsin showing us these are good woodcock areas.
Yep.
Are you looking for more marshy areas adjacent to those cuts? Kind of, what does that
Not really
look like?
marshy. I mean, we're looking for real young aspen a lot of times. It really depends if you have a really young pointing dog. I mean, if you have a young pointing dog, I would look at like this area right there. Looks like that would probably hold some flight birds. Potentially looks like a pretty recent cut. If I got a really young dog, I want to get in the woodcock right away in the morning and get that dog, pointing a little bit and getting some, when I say a young dog, a puppy or a year or two old puppy that needs some bird work, and then, go after the grouse. But, the flight birds with woodcock, and during the flight, they're going to be anywhere, which is kind of nice. The only thing I do ask for people that hunt woodcock is if you have a pointing dog, only shoot over pointed birds, because that's going to make your dog better. And we're only allowed 3. Flushing, obviously that's a different deal, but, I look for a lot of alder runs, swamp. Like right now, I could go back there, Ben, right? Yeah, right there. I would, if I'm going to be focusing on woodcock, look for some swamps and just kind of follow those swamps a little bit until you find where it's going to be a good alder run potentially. Maybe it's a good aspen cut. Get to some water where they're going to be able to worm and probe. This year should be better because we got a lot more moisture in the woods coming into the season. Last year it was tough, like I said, so you're gonna have to change up your thinking a little bit.
Yep, exactly. So like this looks like a good woodcock area, a lot of marshy area. And, as you're walking down the trails, or like if you're on the edge of a field or a little opening, you can see those little, if you Google probe holes,
Yep.
you can see those. And that's obviously a telltale sign that they're in there. But if the ground is solid, the odds are, they can't probe, they can't look for worms.
Rocky, real rocky land, real rocky soil's not good. Get to that moist. This would probably be, it looks like a better, like a more of a flight woodcock cover, because it looks like it's a pretty recent cut. It's pretty thin, so that might hold, migrating birds coming down, just resting for a day or two and boogieing out. Yeah, a little bit, again, not to beat a dead horse, but proper preparation prevents poor performance. And then that's really what we're doing here. That's what we're maximizing our time using technology now. We still have to shoot. We still have to have a good dog. We still have to have good boots. But that's what we're really doing, is maximizing our time right now to get that.
Yeah, exactly. Another
No, I
good tip.
say right. The guy just posted, but I'm talking real rocky ground for woodcock. You know, some of the best grouse hunting I've had have been around on the Iron Range up here in Minnesota. You know, some of those old taconite outcroppings are really good stuff for grouse. You know, but woodcock tend not to like to hurt their beak, so to speak.
Another
One
tip here.
stand-up joke for the night.
Yeah. Another tip here before we go is like a lot of like the times if you're trying to hit the migration, whether you're in the north, south, east, west, is finding rivers, right? A lot of those times those birds are gonna funnel in along those wet areas and follow rivers down.
You know, what's funny is follow rivers, and then also follow big power lines that are going through the woods. I know there's some pipelines in Michigan. You know, we got a new pipeline in Minnesota. Those tend to can hold some woodcock because, again, that ground is disturbed, but it looks like I said, a flyaway river. They can pop in and sit type of deal. Yeah, anything, you know, woodcock I think they're pretty cool, but you know, you just got to find a little bit of moisture and just kind of find a pattern for them. I just saw it popped in. I know we're not doing question and answers yet, but you know, what dates do you find the migration? And one nice thing about everybody's cell phones is you can look at weather up in Canada really easy. So if you see a big cold front coming up in Winnipeg and Manitoba, you know, some big northerly winds coming down, you know what, you're probably a day or two from some of these woodcocks starting to trickle down. You know, typically they say the local woodcock are the last to leave. So I look at my local weather, and then I also always take a couple seconds and look what's happening 5, 6, 7 hours north of me to kind of get an idea when these woodcock potentially could come down.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you know, I can't remember. It is the Eastern Woodcock Migration Research Cooperative, yep. I think it's called.
We did one in the central region, did one a couple years ago before that, where they picked up 92,000 data points with the GPS collars. And that I think I have it somewhere, but that research is out there. And there's some really cool data when the first bird leaves and the last bird leaves and everything. But if you're a woodcock nut, there's a lot of good research being done right now on woodcock across the country.
Yeah. So if you go, like, for example, like woodcockmigration.org, yep. Just tons of valuable information, especially if you're from the East Coast, but even for us in the Great Lakes, ton of information about where they're stopping over. Like once they get to an area, what are they doing?
Yep.
So well worth your time. I think it's woodcockmigration.org. Before we go into some Q&A stuff, I want to talk about, a lot of people are asking about gear and getting prepared. So let's talk a little bit about gear, Jerry. We'll start with let's just a number of questions about guns and ammo. Kind of what are you looking for in terms of gauges, shot size, etc.?
I typically recommend, you know, a 20 or 28. I start out shooting 9s early season when there's a lot of leaves. And then I gradually, as less leaves go down, I'll switch to 7.5s. And then when we're in November, December, I'm typically shooting 7.5s and 6s. 6s out of my second barrel for obvious reasons. I got more long range power, a little bit more pack a punch. You know, 16 gauge is a real popular gauge right now, and it's a good gauge if you get in a light gun. But really, there's some of the best ammo being built ever, and that's kind of a neat thing for us hunters. Yeah, I know there's an issue in finding it, but if you again plan, you can get it. So if you're going to buy one gun, I would look at a 20 gauge. You can use that for everything besides grouse and woodcock, but pheasants. I would shoot, if you got some older guns, shoot light loads if you can find them. But really, if I had one gun and didn't have any options, I would shoot a 20 gauge. I'd start with 9s, 8s and 9s early season. Again, more pellets, more BBs on elite with a lot more leaves. As leaves start coming down, I go to 7.5s. And then again, late season, 7.5, 6s, even 5s sometimes, depending, where I'm going to be at. But, you shoot a good lead load. I think there's some really good stuff being made now, non-toxic. I know Boss has a few loads right now that perform really, really good. So I'm going to shoot some Boss ammo this year, a little bit, but, and too, even 12 gauge. I mean, now keep in mind, everybody thinks we're going to be a snob when I say this, but we only use break action shotguns here at Pineridge. And it's not because we're that type of guy. It's really a safety issue for us when we're guiding. I can't tell if a pump gun or a semi-automatic gun is empty, but I can tell when an over and under side by side's safe. And again, let's take it one step further. My theory, and Ben heard me say this all the time, but believe it or not, we all can afford chicken. And what I mean by that is we all have a computer, we all have a cell phone, we're paying for onX. We can afford a chicken fillet when we want to eat. And what I mean by that is, the grouse and woodcock are supposed to win once in a while. We're supposed to miss. They're trying to survive. So like I said, we take 2 shots at a grouse. We'll follow it up once after that. My theory is the grouse won, we're done. He beat us on that day, or that typical bird won that game. And so, again, it kind of goes back to conservation or whatever, and protecting the resource. But, if we were starving, then I would talk otherwise, but we're not. So we can afford to let a couple go and not shoot a limit and all that fun stuff. I traditionally side-by-sides are pretty important or pretty prevalent back to history. Over and unders are nice. Just, get a good gun. Obviously I'm biased with Upland Gun Company, but do it the right way and get a side-by-side or an over and under. You get 2 shots and have some fun with it. I'm a big proponent of lightness when I'm walking in the woods. I don't carry 2 boxes of shells. I carry maybe 10. I want a real light gun. That's why a 28 gauge is real popular, or a real light 16 or whatever. But that would be my big talk on guns, is just get something that fits you too. Get a good gun that fits. And again, you can adjust, really adjust with your shot, your ammo, what the time of season that you're going to do it.
And Joe,
sorry, my mind's going. A barrel length is a big deal with people. We've seen it with the Upland Gun Company. I want 24-inch barrels. It's too thick. There's some really good podcasts out there with Lars Jacobs on there, or Del Whitman. If you can't swing with the 26-inch, you're not going to swing with the 28. And if you have pointing dogs, or you have a really good flushing dog, you have more time and space than you actually think, where you can actually swing a 28, 29-inch barrel, a longer barrel. Really personal preference, but I would really go with a 28-inch barrel a lot of times.
Yeah. And then what chokes are you shooting? I don't know if you mentioned chokes.
Chokes, again, IC mod is pretty standard with everybody. And the reason I suggest that IC mod is if you're going to go pheasant hunting, you want to take your gun duck hunting, you can really switch ammo that way. But, if you had all the money in the world, I would maybe go skeet and light mod would be a good fixed chokes. Or if you got choke tubes, go with a skeet and the mod, or a skeet and the light mod would be really great. But really, most people can get by if they have a little planning and concept of how to use ammunition the correct way, using an IC, improved cylinder, or mod.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing I want to just make sure is if you're new to it, if you've got a pump, if you've got an automatic, 12 gauge, doesn't matter.
That's a great.
This is Jerry and I are really into it, right? A lot of people are really into it. We're shooting side by sides and over unders, whatever. But it doesn't matter if you've got 12 gauge with 7.5 lead,
use it.
Get after it.
I'm going to say this, and thank you for reminding me. The best thing about grouse and woodcock hunting, there's a lot of great things, but the barrier to entry for grouse and woodcock hunting is you borrow your grandpa's gun. Doesn't matter what it is, borrow it. 870, the old Model 12, get a box of ammo. Somebody's going to give you a free orange baseball hat. Take your mutt, take your German Shepherd, don't take a dog, and just get out in the public lands. If you're not buying a duck boat, you're not buying all the fancy weather clothing, you're not buying all that stuff. Grouse and woodcock hunting in our states, like Great Lakes states, is the best because anybody can do it and it doesn't cost a lot of money to get into it. And you might find your passion, after a season of borrowing your grandpa's gun. And that's how I started. That's how you started. That's probably how everybody probably started. Borrowed a gun that didn't fit you. Somebody gave you a hat and you just went and walked public land. And that's the beauty of our country. Like it or not, that's the beauty of our country is we can still do that. And that's not lost on me. So thank you for reminding me that, Ben.
Yeah, for sure. So now we're going to we'll transition into some Q&A here. Before we do that, just want to remind you, if you want to win some onX swag, Jack is going to post a link here in the chat. You can sign up if you want to learn. You want to go to more master classes. You enjoyed this one. Be sure to check that link out. And I think we've got a pheasant one coming up next week as well as quail. So now we can, Jerry, actually I should take that back. Any final touch points on gear? We talked about gun and shell.
There's a lot of really good vests out there right now. And I'm kind of a vest junkie. I've got, I think everyone ever made. And, the biggest thing on vests, I like Final Rise is a good vest. I think they're an elite member of your guys's. I like them because they're real light and it's compact and it gives really good back support. But when you're looking for gear, you want to really, I think for a good grouse and woodcock person, you want to look at light and stuff that's going to hold up. You're walking 7, 8, 9, 10 miles a day and you're going over stuff. So any extra weight, some of those real big canvas type stuff gets pretty heavy. The jackets get pretty heavy. And you really want to dress as light as you can, I think, because you're sweating and you're exercising. But gear, one essential gear I tell everybody is if you have dogs, make sure you carry a hemostat or a Leatherman. I carry both. Leatherman for everything but a hemostat for porcupines. You never know. That's a big deal. It might not sound like a big deal. Gloves are important. You do get cut up. Some guys like them. Some people don't. And probably the most important thing, and again, I made a joke about it when people ask on Facebook, what's the best boot to buy? I don't care what you buy, just buy a good pair of boots. You just spend the money and have them for a few years, but buy a good pair of boots because we are walking, and a good pair of rubber boots if it's wet. But if you're going to skimp on pants, skip on vest, but really it's important to have a good pair of comfortable boots when you're walking all day. And then hemostat, and the biggest thing is, this is a hard sport, but it's very, very rewarding. And when you do the mapping in January and you scout and you shoot this big old male grouse, I equate that to the people I guide. That's like shooting a 10-point buck, or it really is, because they're smart and they're hard and there's a lot of variables. So take pride and be proud that you accomplished something that a lot of people, not very many people do, is they've shot a grouse on the wing, and be proud of that. So that's my 2 cents on gear.
Yeah. Jerry touched on it too, but having a good, we won't get into it here, but having a good first aid kit.
Yes.
For dogs. Huge.
And I saw somebody in the deal, but we're talking about onX. I love onX. It's still a good idea to throw a compass on your vest, keep it in your pocket. Cell phones die, satellites don't work, compasses are cheap. Have a compass.
Oh, I forgot about one. Like, I can't believe I forgot about this wildly important topic to talk about. I'm glad you brought that up, Jerry. 2 things I neglected to mention when it comes to onX and using it in the grouse woods. If you guys aren't familiar, if there's grouse hunters up in northern reaches of the states, you guys know that cell phone service can be at a premium sometimes. We don't always have it. So Um, before you go out into the field, you're definitely going to want to utilize offline maps. If you haven't seen it, I'm going to show you on the computer here what you can do it on the computer, and what happens is it will prompt your phone. Then you have to download it on your phone, but a lot of the times I just do this on my phone. But if you don't have cell phone service, onX, without downloading maps, it's going to be very, very difficult. It's going to be almost useless. So what you want to do before you go on a hunt is download offline maps. So what you can do is on the left side here on the web map, it'll be on the bottom toolbar of your app. You're going to want to download some offline maps. So what I tell people to do is start out at 150 mile, which is low resolution, and then just do the whole area you're going to be hunting. And I like to, I mean, that 150 at least will give you some room for error if you all of a sudden are you get way up somewhere else. At least you'll have maps. And before you start saving maps, what we tell people is you want the map to look like what you have in the field when it's on your computer. So if I want this Wisconsin game bird layer on, I'm going to turn that on. If I want private and public, I'm going to turn that on. So again, we'll go back to this offline map. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And then that has that whole area. I'm going to pin down into these areas I want to hunt. And I'm going to do kind of make like little boxes around kind of the area I want to hunt. So like this is one area I'm going to hunt. Let's just say this is an area I'm going to hunt up here. I'm going to make a new offline map. And this is essentially just giving you better resolution by doing these little ones. And I will go around, and a lot of the times I will just grid out an area I want to hunt. And then I'll go and punch in and actually do the 5 mile high res maps within there. So I make sure I have the best imagery, the cleanest resolution available for the spots I hunt. So I'll go around and do these patchworks. And if you click on your phone on that bottom left tab where it says offline maps, just confirm they download before you go into the field. You'll see a little green check mark, because if you are driving out in the field and all of a sudden you start getting into bad service, and you're like, oh gosh, I better download a map. It's too late. You know, it takes data to do that. So you want to do it either before you leave on Wi-Fi or when you have good LTE or 5G service. So that's one thing. Another good tool is on your app on your phone is the tracker. I use that all the time.
Great safety measure.
When I get out of the truck, I'll hit the tracker, which is in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. I'll start that and just track it. It helps me, like Jerry said, for safety reasons, but then also for knowing which areas you've covered and which areas you haven't. So then I'll compare, like I said here, like this plan. A lot of the times I'll go back and I'll compare that, like, okay, what did I do? What areas did I miss, et cetera. And that helps me down the road as well. Another thing with offline maps is if on your phone, if you click offline maps, like let's just say you're at the edge of like you have 3G service, which is weird now. 3G is like nothing. You can't operate on 3G where it used to be the best. So if you're on the edge of service, if you click that offline maps button, and then that'll bring up a display screen in the top right. It'll say go offline. I do that a lot of the times when I'm at edge of service and it's taking the map a long time to load. I'll click that, and then it'll automatically tell the app to say, hey, I've got offline maps here. Let's use those. So I'm glad I remembered that.
And you're talking about that. Those are awesome. And then when we were talking about guns, Ted said, take the time to pat on your shotgun. Really, that really, you should know where your gun shoots, and 30 yards, car bar, it takes a couple things, pat on your shotgun. And another good question, we're just talking about tips before we get to the other questions, but what if you don't have a dog? And that's a great question. You're a brand new hunter, you got your grandpa's shotgun, you got your old, you don't have a dog, still use onX, hunt those edges. But when you're walking, I like to tell people, you know what, walk 5 or 10 feet, stop, just watch. Walk 5 or 10 feet, just watch. You know, make the birds nervous a little bit. You know, you're going to walk past grouse, you're going to walk past woodcock, but when you're hunting without a dog, you know, you can be, lack of a better word, stealthy, but walk 10, 15 yards and just stop and wait 15 seconds and do the same thing. You know, make those birds nervous so that you're going to catch them out of the corner of your eye and they might flush. So that would be those are 2 good tips that I just saw as you were talking, Ben.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions on
A lot
hunting.
of great questions.
A lot of questions, a lot of questions, even in the registration about people asking, how do I hunt without dogs? So, great point, Jerry. The other thing, I mean, like my brother, for example, they've got a group of buddies that go up and they don't have dogs, but they love to grouse hunt. So they've developed quite the strategy that works quite well for hunting without a dog. You know, they'll, especially if you have 1 or 2 other buddies, what they'll do is they'll, you know, get off, because logging roads, they're easy to walk. They form natural edges, right?
Yep.
They're an edge bird. There's a lot of the time there's clover, little strawberry plants growing out right in the middle of the trail. So what they'll do is they'll get off the trail 5 or 10 yards, either side of the trail, and they'll walk down it. And it has been very, very successful for them. You know, if they get a bird, they'll chase it one flush, follow it one way or the other, and parallel those logging roads. You can do the same thing on those edges between cuts and mature timber, swamp edges. The thing is you just really want to hyper focus on key areas, because you don't have a dog that's doing the work for you, covering that ground. Where we walk 2 miles, our dog might be covering 5 or 6 miles. So just really want to pinpoint on those key areas and try not to walk unproductive cover. So that's a tip that for guys that don't have dogs as well.
And if you have a buddy, have one guy on the trail, one guy 15, 20 yards in on the side of the trail.
Exactly.
No, lots of good questions. So I don't know how you want to go ahead and start that, Benny, but go ahead.
Yeah, we'll kick it off. So let me pull up my questions doc here. So this was an interesting question. You know, is talking about times of day. So like when you're going out to hunt grouse, do your covers differ in the morning versus midday versus the afternoon?
A little bit, you know, we don't get up real early. Grouse don't get up real early. They don't like getting their feet wet. Big reason why I love them. You know, I'll tend to use, you know, I'll use one of my better dogs in the morning and kind of find some woodcock cover type of deal and pick up a few grouse, let the grouse kind of wake up a little bit. Again, edges, maybe do a traditional clear cut aspen like we've talked about. And in the evening, you want to go where that food's going to be. Grouse probably feed for 15, 20 minutes at night, 30 minutes max maybe. So get where there's going to be some food, again, along some of those edges a little bit where they're coming out, to get some of that open, to get some, like I said, oh my God, there's aspen leaves, aspen buds, dogwood, all that type of stuff. So in the evening, we kind of switch it up a little bit and kind of go focus more 100% on where that food's going to be. And look, we're like, I'm trying to think of some of the covers that I have, a little bit more mixed hardwoods, a little bit, some hardwoods in there with some aspen, a lot of alders type of deal. It's kind of where I would focus on during the heat of the day, depending on the weather. If I've got water around, if it's going to be real early season and hot, I'll hunt an area that's going to have water primarily for the dogs, and they're going to pick up some birds in there too. But really good cover is consistent throughout the day.
Yep. And then another kind of on the similar train of thought, this question was, well, I can only find birds on rainy days, which is interesting. So that kind of brings up, like, you know, we had talked about finding some coniferous, some pine tree cover. There's a layer in the app as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's called coniferous tree distribution under your trees, crops, and cover. And that's awesome, because again, you can find, you know, if you've got a rainy day, well, here's a 2003 cut that's bordered by pine trees, right?
Yeah.
And you can even, you know, if we're looking for, let's just say we're looking specifically for, you know, fir hemlock, something a little bit thicker. you can turn that on and then say, all right, well, here's a cut that is bordered by these pines. And like we were talking about earlier, you turn on that oak layer and all of a sudden you have like, you can start to put that big picture together in your head.
That's a great cover. Would be anytime, really.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Again, just diversity, because those
Diversity
birds
is
aren't,
the key.
those birds aren't leaving us that area, a 10 acre, 40 acre, whatever area it is. So the more diversity you have within those specific areas, the easier it is for that bird to want to spend its whole life there.
Yep.
Let's see here. What's another good one? We've got a lot of questions about hunting grouse in Rocky Mountain states. Personally, don't have a ton of experience being with onX. Based out of Missoula, I've got a lot of good friends that hunt grouse in the mountains. I can just touch on this really quick. If you go, like, for example, the Montana Fish and Game or Fish, Wildlife and Parks, they put out some great resources to find grouse in different areas. Elevation is something we don't really deal with a whole lot here. But for mountain grouse, especially rough grouse, you're looking for elevation bands in that 3,500 to 5,500 range. You're looking for those really wet, dank areas, finding streams on eastern facing slopes, that thick cover. Those riparian wet areas are the places you're definitely going to want to look. Actually, we're going to be, if you look on our onX YouTube channel, just keep looking there. We'll be posting a video about targeting mountain grouse in particular, because it is a whole different ball game.
And we've got a lot of questions. I've had a couple questions on it, and I sent you a couple on, I'm in Washington, I'm in Oregon. Where do you guys find them? And a little bit out of my league, but I would think some of the same theories probably hold true a little bit. Look for edges, look for food sources. You're just at a higher level, and the trees and the habitat's gonna be a little different, but that same basic concept's going to be the same.
Yeah, in the onX app as well, there's historic wildfire layers. Again, it's not logging, but it is disturbance, right? It's the same thing. Yep. Let's see here. Let's go back to a few more questions here. One question is, you're hearing drummers in the spring. You're hearing a lot of them. Is it worth going back to hunt those same areas that you're hearing drummers in the spring?
Yeah, I mean, the birds are, like I said, a grouse is going to live typically in about a 40-acre area. So yeah, definitely. I will say this, and this is personal experience, that we've had a lot of customers say, I hear one drumming and I hear it and they want to go chase it. And I say, I've done that a million times. It's not going to work. It's one of those unwritten, one of my own guide rules, kind of like a banana on a fishing boat. You don't do it. If that guy's drumming and you're going to try to chase him, you're going to screw up your whole plan and you're never going to get him anyways, because he's too smart. But there's birds, if you hear them in drumming in the spring, yeah, you're going to see them. That's the beauty about spending that time in January, February, because we do have up until April 15th to go check those areas out. And we can run our dogs, or you can walk by April 15th to find out those grouse and see where you're at. So if you hear drummers in the spring, definitely go back there. They're going to be around in that area. Yep.
Yeah, because a lot of the time, the male is very territorial. Like, they're not going to leave that area. So if you're hearing a lot of birds there, heck yeah, like, get back in there and figure it out. So, one thing I wanted to touch on too is a lot of questions about, we had talked about prime age timber cuts. One thing to remember with that is each area is different. Each soil type is different. So, like that 5 to 15 year is just a range. Some areas, with poor soil, you could be hunting good aspen cuts all the way to 20 years old, and they might still be the right size, versus some areas with really productive soil. After 7 or 8 years, they might not be holding as many birds. So that's one thing.
Well, keep in mind, covers are going to age out, and covers mature, and you might find something now, you might go back in 5 years and there might not be any birds. There's a lot of reasons why it gets shut out, but trees grow, and It's a proven fact that grouse and woodcock need young successional forests, and they need that constant checkerboarding, that constant young forest. And you can hunt a cover for 20 years, and I guarantee you're not going to find a lot of birds those last few years. So that's why you have to constantly find a few new covers every time you go hunting every year to add to your cachet of go-to places.
Yeah. I'm seeing a few questions pop up here. Are you running bells or beepers on your dog?
I run bells with a GPS collar. Um, Part of that is I do like the quiet. I don't like the sound of the beepers. I do like the bells for a couple reasons. I always know where my dog's at, and my guys I'm guiding always know where they're at. It's really, really tough to listen to a silent dog when you got a couple people. Um, and my bells, I know the maximum distance of my bells, so I can really keep track and handle my dog that way. My bells run about 100 to 110 yards. Also for a bell, if you've got a good pointing dog, you can really read your dog and how that dog's moving bell wise. Bing, ding, 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 ding. I got a bell here. I should have grabbed it. But the minute that bell slows down a little bit, if you got a dog that's wool broke, whoa him. Whoa means stop. Walk up there. 9 times out of 10, you're going to put up a woodcock or a grouse. So a bell is just a really, really good tool to keep track of where your dog's at. It's a very traditional way that they hunted without the GPSs. The bell stops, dog goes on point. We're 30 yards to the left. Let's go there, and get ready for a shot and a point.
Yeah.
Which leads me to another very, very important thing. And this is when one question leads to 5 other questions. If you've got a pointing dog, you don't want to cut that point off short. And what I mean by that is only walking 5 or 6 feet and be thinking that bird's right in front of that dog's nose. Grouse especially are going to walk. They want to survive. So, you want to have your dog on point and walk past that dog to try to flush it. We can talk about that more later, or drop me an email or whatever, what I mean, but that's really big. And once you get on point, there's still a lot of work to be done to try to harvest that bird.
Yeah, I'm very similar to the Jerry style. I'll run a Garmin Alpha, and I also have a bell on there. And one thing is, not all bells are created equal. So if you've got a tighter working dog, like go to a gun dog supply or a Lion Country, and match the bell with the range of your dog. If you have like a little cocker or something, don't put a Northwoods bell on that dog. The Northwoods bell is, we run that on bigger running pointers and setters.
Yeah.
And you'll hear that for 250 yards. Like, you will go crazy if you have that bell on a cocker that stays 20 yards. So that's a thing that definitely consider. GPS collars, for me at least, have been worth their weight in gold. Before I had them, there's been a number of times where it's like I would have given every dollar to my name to have a GPS so I can know where that dog is. Gone are the days of having to necessarily lay a code out and
it's safety. It really is a safety thing, and that's how you can that's how you can justify spending the money on it. One thing too on bells too, if you got a really high running, a real high need dog, I put my dog bells on my GPS collar on top of the neck, not below, so we're not tearing up knees and everything when they're running. But great question.
Very good point. Another one here is, I've heard this question. I've seen it pop up on social media. When it comes to like conibear traps and snares, like I've seen a number of people say, like, I'm afraid to go in the woods. I don't know. I don't want my dog to get into it. Kind of what I tell people is it's a fact of life. Like, if you're a hunter and you're a hunting dog, like, that's something that could potentially happen. It's never happened to me in my lifetime, but you have to be prepared to deal with it. So, Jerry, kind of what's your spiel on traps?
First of all, I know, and I think anybody can go to their website, but the Minnesota Trappers Association has a really nice little Ziploc bag with a little kit and instructions on how to take a conibear. I carry 2 really big, heavy-duty zip ties for it. When we do our onX class here, if you never have to do it, it's great, but it's good to see. Go online and just say how to take a dog out of counterbear just so you're familiar with it. But all my guides, you can use it with a leash. But I personally think the easiest is 2 really heavy duty electrical zip ties. Keep them in your bag. And again, you just slip them through the round little clamps, zip tie them up and get your dog out. Biggest thing is don't panic. But again, be prepared. Be prepared. Go to, even if you're out of state, Minnesota Trappers Association.com, I think is what it is. They'll mail you a free kit with the instructions, and it costs you nothing to be prepared. But if you get, have a buddies and borrow a trapper's conibear and literally set it, put a stuffed animal in it, and practice pulling that apart with the zip ties or a leash. You can buy some tools out there at $20, I think. A little heavy and cumbersome, but for a lot of women, outdoorsmen, they carry that because they don't have the strength, and that's a good, like I said, that's another good option too. But when we're hunting, there's a lot of stuff that can happen. I mean, sticks in the eye and sticks in our eye, sticks in the dog. So having a little first aid kit, having zip ties, being prepared, having a hemostat, just having those few little things is really gonna save your hunt and could save your dog too.
Yeah, for sure. Just good to be prepared.
Very good.
Another question here is how do you, after like the October to September, October timeframe, as you start to shift into November and early December, kind of how do your hunting strategies change during the late season?
I tend to probably, the woodcock are gone, obviously, because they've migrated out. And I think the grouse kind of they spread out in October, and then they kind of come back together because food's really narrow. I'll tend to hunt a little bit more open woods, so to speak, a little bit more mature. And you got some deadfalls in there, you got some more edges in there, but I tend to walk a little slower in that time because they can hear you coming. A little bit if you've got snow on the ground. But I tend to hunt a little bit older, more mature. I kind of get out of the real young aspen cuts and get into some of the older aspens and where you got more pine trees and more oaks. I hunt that, so to speak. And I can think of one distinctive cover right now that is like my go-to, late November cover. You get a 35-degree sunny day, and there's always birds in there, and they're bunched up 2-3 at a time sometimes. So late season, leaves are down. You got a better opportunity to shoot longer shots. Big thing is you might want to go, if you got choke tubes, maybe you go light mod, but drop down a shot size or 2, shoot 6s on that second barrel for sure, or 5, because really you have some chance at some 50, 60-yard shots potentially in that late season in that opener woods. So.
Yeah, I mean, just really, really focusing in on key food sources. Yep. And good cover and finding them really close in conjunction to each other, because when it's that cold out, those birds are not going to want to expend energy going significant distances to go find food from key cover. So, and
a lot of deadfalls. I mean, a little bit more mature forest, you're going to have a little more deadfalls. If you got a dog, man, get that dog to hit those objectives with, like I said, micro cover within a cover. Late season like that, those deadfalls, those down pine trees, those fallen lightning striked oak trees that are on the ground, man, that's good warmth, that's good cover. They're out of the snow, they're out of the wind. Get your dog into theirs and let them run those.
Yeah. Well, we are at time. Jerry, do you have any parting words of wisdom for everyone that was so?
I hope I didn't bore people. I get pretty excited about talking about this stuff. I literally love it. And probably the biggest thing, my advice is go out and do it. I mean, get off the Instagram, get off the Facebook. Don't ask. I can't stand people when they say, hey, I'm going to be in Timbuktu for a weekend. Anybody have some good places to go? No. We all have onX. Find your own places and just get out there and walk and just hunt. And I mean, not to sound like an old curmudgeon, but that's how I did it. And that's how a lot of people should do it, and use the tools at onX to make you a better hunter. and just get out and do it. It really, it's just one of the most rewarding sports there is. And I understand the allure of pheasants and the prairie birds. I do get it, but there's just something about grouse and woodcock hunting that you see something different every day. And one other tip, and then I'll do my closing, but beaver, we forgot to talk about beaver dams and beaver cuts. If you know where there's any beaver dam, active beavers, man, if you know where they're at, get in there, right? They're the original foresters. They make the best habitat. It's great for grouse. It's great for woodcock. So if you know where there's some good beaver flowages or whatever, get on those edges of those beavers and go. So I just thought of that as we're talking, but just get out and do it. If you have any questions, you can drop me a note at Pineridge Grouse Camp. My email is grousecamp@gmail or Instagram. But you know, really enjoy it. This grouse and woodcock hunting, I think, is a little different than most other upland huntings. And I've seen a lot of the sharp-tailed guys, whatever. We're not about limits. And that might sound weird, but we're about the experience, and that I still, my heart still skips a beat when I hear a grouse flush, or I have a dog on point, or you shoot a really nice. It's just get out and do it, and you'll learn yourself and teach yourself. You know, I'm still learning every day when I'm in the woods. I mean, they really can mess me up still, but that would be my advice. Just get out and do it, and have fun with it. Have fun with it.
Well,
and
Jerry,
take somebody with you too.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, Jerry, we really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wealth of knowledge. And to everyone out there, glad you could come in and ask questions and be with us tonight. So if you missed part of this webinar and want to go back and reference it, it will be posted up on YouTube tomorrow on the onX Hunt channel. While you're there, there are a number of great YouTube videos that break down some of the topics we talked about tonight even further. So be sure to scroll back there and look at some of that. Jerry, did you have one more thing?
Yeah, just if you guys have any questions, seriously, there's some great questions in there I saw. Email me, like I said, at grousecamp@gmail.com and give me a couple of days. I'd answer them, not a problem. And then, like I said, check out the Elite program on onX. Is an awesome resource. And our like I said, Upland, our gun company is on there too, and play around with that. You got any questions on that? But like I said, Ben's job and my job is hopefully you guys picked up some tips and make you successful. And if you've got some good questions, like I see, just shoot me an email and I'd be happy to answer them when I can.
Awesome. Well, the season is here for some people and it's right around the corner for others. So get out there and enjoy your time in the grouse woods. Hopefully you're successful, and thank you for being with us tonight.